So I want to start off by thanking my friend Stephanie who gave me this idea. She brought up doing a separate channel and stuff, maybe doing a written blog, and I've actually tried to do written blogs so many times, but I edit myself out of them. And what I mean by that is I sit there and I edit and I edit and I edit what I wrote to make sure it's grammatically perfect, that everything is the way it's supposed to be, and I end up losing myself in making the grammar corrections instead of just being myself and writing down what I need to say. I'm sometimes still a little uncomfortable in front of the camera, even though we've been doing this for a while, like 6 months maybe, but we had some time off. So anyways, thank you, Steph, for giving me the idea to do this. I want to be able to talk about some of the stuff that I deal with on a day-to-day basis, some of the stuff I deal with in my everyday life that maybe we don't necessarily show in the vlogs, stuff that's really hard for me and challenging for me, and topics that, you know, maybe aren't the most upbeat, so we don't share them in our vlogs. And the first one I want to talk about today is one of my children. Our son Alan, a year ago today, was diagnosed with autism. And it was one of those things that I knew something was wrong from the time he was a tiny baby. Or not necessarily wrong, I know that people are probably going to be offended by that, and that's where I would have edited myself, but I knew something was different with him from like day one. I mean, he didn't like being held, he liked to just sleep in the cot without being held, and even after we brought him home, he would only sleep in his crib, like literally only sleep in his crib. We had to put him in his crib every time he wanted to sleep, and he did not like being held, like at all. And I just thought it was odd, and he would cry when I was holding him. And I had brought him in because I wanted to make sure he didn't have a dislocated shoulder or anything like that, and he didn't. He physically was fine. They had no explanation. You know, they're just like, well, every baby's different. You know, maybe he's just a little less clingy. You should be glad he's not clingy, because then you're able to put him down and get stuff done. I wanted a clingy baby, though. I wanted a baby that wanted to be with me. As annoying as some parents think that is, I like having my baby want me to hold them. And so, you know, for a while I just got used to the fact that he didn't like to be picked up and held, and it bothered me, but I lived with it, you know. And then eventually he started getting to the point where he should have been, you know, making some sounds and crawling and doing stuff, and he was a little bit slower than my daughter at doing everything, and I kept still hearing, you know, every baby is different, and so I accepted that as the answer, as what was going on with him was just that he was different than his sister, that he was doing things in his own time. And then he got to be a few months old, and it was to the point where he should have been responding to his name, and he wasn't doing that. We'd say his name and he would just keep doing whatever he was doing, and so we're like, you know, this is odd. So I had his hearing checked, and they said his hearing is fine, you know, but if we're still noticing issues, bring him back. So that's exactly what happened. So I think he had 2 or 3 hearing tests, because he actually had a hearing test the day he was born that he failed. And so then he had the one that I requested, and then another one. Every time he passed his hearing test, except for the very first time he failed it, and they had repeated it and he passed it. So he had a few hearing tests during his first year of life, and everyone came back, you know, besides for that very first newborn one, that his hearing was fine. And, you know, once again, it's probably just the personality. He's probably just ignoring you. Every baby's different. And then I started getting more and more concerned around 9 months. When he was 9 months old, he would slam his head into his crib or into walls or into the floor, stuff like that. And he started doing it a tiny bit prior to being 9 months old, but like it got really bad around 9 months old. He was just doing it constantly. And we brought him into the doctor. She said, well, lots of kids do that to fall asleep, you know, it's okay. And it got to the point where I started to wonder if he had sensory problems, just from the different various issues that I was experiencing with him, whether it be like putting clothes on him and he wouldn't wear certain clothes, or like he would not wear socks. he screamed bloody murder if I tried to put socks on him. And I mean, it was small stuff like that, and then compounded with the head banging, I started to wonder if he had sensory processing disorder. Now, for those of you who don't know, sensory processing disorder is a disorder in which people process their senses differently. So they may be sensitive to touch, to smells, to light, that kind of thing. Or, they might have a hypersensitivity, or they might have a hyposensitivity. So they're undersensitive to light, touch, smell, whatever. I thought he had some hypersensitivities, and so we decided that, we keep an eye on things, with his doctor. And then he started to not sleep around 19 or 20 months old. I mean, not sleep at all. Like, he completely quit sleeping. He'd sleep for a few hours here and there when he literally crashed because he was so exhausted. But that was about it. And then when he was reaching his second birthday, he had started learning words finally. He was very delayed in learning his speech. He finally started learning some words as he got close to his second birthday. Then his second birthday hit, and he just about quit talking altogether. This was really scary for me because I know the normal development of a kid, and so I know that, by a certain age they should be saying so many words, and he wasn't doing that the way that he should have been. But so I started getting really concerned, and I brought him into his doctor, and I said, look, I know every baby is different. I know what you've been telling me from day one, and I'm not saying you're wrong, but I would like to look into things a little bit more. And then the same time I talked to her, I called a place called Help Me Grow, and they do testing and stuff, like developmental screenings for children. So I had him screened, and he was diagnosed by them with severe developmental delays. And then I got a call from our doctor that she had set us up to meet with a neurologist about his issues too. And so we went through an insane amount of testing. They put him through so much at the tiny age he was at. He had MRIs, he had EEGs. I mean, the kid was just, when we went to the hospital, we had to stay there overnight, and he was covered in wires. And it was so heartbreaking because one of the things that we had to witness was him being put under, and I don't know if you guys have ever seen a child be put under. We were told that it looks like they go to sleep. That is not a big deal, it just looks like they go to sleep. It does not look like they go to sleep. He was screaming bloody murder 1 second, and then his whole body went limp. It looked like he had died. I'm not even kidding you. It was horrible to see. It was gut-wrenching. I did not like watching him get put under. And so basically what they were doing was they were trying to rule out anything else. One of the things with autism is that it's really diagnosed by ruling out everything else. And they checked for seizure disorders, they checked for brain tumors, any of that kind of stuff. All of his tests came back clean except for he had elevated HVA levels, which is something that your body can produce if you have a tumor in your abdomen called now I can't think of what it's called. And so right now he had a scan on his stomach. There was no tumor there, and they're keeping an eye on his levels. But I mean, he was physically healthy. He is physically healthy. So they ruled out everything else, and we met with his neurologist a year ago today, February 12th, 2015. We met with a neurologist, and he told us, your son has autism. And there's a lot of mixed emotions because my son didn't have something that was going to kill him, but my son had something that was going to affect the rest of his life. And I think we kind of went through like a time, I don't want to say it was mourning, but it was kind of like mourning the person that we thought he was going to grow up to be. You know, you have this idea in your head of what your kid is going to grow up to be, who they're going to be as an adult. And when you find out that some of that stuff may not happen or may be really challenging for them to get to that point, it is horrible. And they couldn't tell us the severity of his autism at that age. As soon as we got his diagnosis, we tried to find any service that we could for him. It was a battle too, like filling out paperwork and fighting with people. And even a year later, it's a battle to make sure he's receiving everything that he needs. And he is doing incredibly well. I can't even tell you how blessed we are with the amazing progress he's made between the therapies that he's getting and working with him at home. His speech has come a really long way. Just his general ability to do things. He's starting to learn to grip a pencil, grip a marker, and learn to write. And I don't know, it's just, we have our good days and our bad days, and some of our bad days can be really, really bad, and it can be frustrating. And then we have our good days, and our good days almost feel that much better because I know what the bad days feel like. One of the things that I feel like a lot of people think of autistic people is that they can't show affection. And that's not true. My son, and maybe it's true of some autistic kids, I can't tell you for sure, maybe it's true of some autistic people, but that is not the case for my son. My son is one of the most affectionate, sweet, caring people I know. He is crazy impatient. I mean, when he wants something, he wants it now. And one of the biggest problems he has is communicating his needs. Sometimes he'll cry and cry and cry, and we'll have to play 20 questions, figure out what he wants. And then another day he'll walk up and say, I need a drink of water. So it's a challenging thing as a parent to deal with a kid like Alan, but it's not impossible, and you learn, you adjust. Everything in your life really, no matter whether your kid is typically developing or is on the spectrum or has Down syndrome or has whatever, you learn to parent that child. And each of my kids, I've had to learn how to parent for them. So whenever people are like, oh, what's your parenting style? Well, my parenting style is Amelia, Alan, Aiden, and Alec. It depends on which kid I'm with and which kid I'm dealing with and what the problem is at hand on how I handle it. Because every one of my children is different, and they all need to be parented in a different way. They all have different needs that need to be met. And it's my job to figure out what those needs are. So I don't have one parenting style or another. I parent my kids. That's it. There's no style to it. As far as Alan's relationship with his siblings, I think that his siblings have a lot less patience for him. Typically, Amelia, to be specific, has low patience and low tolerance for him. She can get annoyed with him really quickly if he's not expressing himself the way that he needs to, and she can get really mad at him. But at the same time, they are so attached to each other. They do not like to be apart. Aiden and Alan get along okay. They play alongside each other really well, but if they try to play together, there's a lot of fighting because neither of them are good at communicating, because Aiden's not even 2. So they have some communication barriers there. Alan loves Alec. He is super attached to Alec, wants to hold him all the time, gets very jealous if other people besides for mommy holds him. He's just very affectionate towards Alec, and he wants to take care of him, and he'll wipe his face and stuff like that. Alan's just a really incredible kid, and I think that, I don't know if him having autism could be considered a blessing or a curse. It probably depends on which day you ask me. But I do know that I'm blessed to have him in my life either way. He has taught me a lot. He's taught me to slow down. He takes a lot of time to do things, you know. Simple things like walking up and down stairs are more of a challenge, so we have to take a longer time. And so that's a big thing that he's taught me, is to slow down and, you know, take a minute. Stop and smell the flowers. That's something that I've definitely learned from raising him. And the journey's just started. I mean, he's so young. We have so much more ahead of us. I mean, he is turning 4 this summer. And so this next year is going to be a lot of trying to prep him for school, you know, working on those handwriting skills and all that stuff. And I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm terrified at the same time. I'm worried I'm not going to get him writing, you know, in time for school. And the truth is if we have to do preschool for 4 or 5 years, it's not going to matter, as long as he is happy and healthy and he's doing good. But anyways, that I wanted to talk a little bit about that because it is February 12th today, and it's the anniversary of his diagnosis, and we've been through a lot in the last year, and we made it, and that's a big deal.